Hello and welcome to today's live stream. You guys are in for a treat. I've been talking backstage with my friend Aaron Anderson, and he has some awesome advice to give you. And I'm excited just to kind of talk shop a little bit. So join us here. Before we get started, though, let us know where you're joining from. Hello and welcome to today's live stream. We are so excited to have you here and excited to get started. Do me a favor and in the comments below, let us know where you're joining from. Looks like we have about 10 people already joining us for the live stream. Welcome, as we have about a minute left to get started. Let me know in the comments where you're joining from and what type of stuff you've been shooting recently. Hello and welcome to the live stream. I am so excited to have you here. Hopefully you guys are doing well, staying safe, healthy, and ready to rock out on another live stream. So let's see who is joining us so far. Who do we have here? Jim Summers, looking like a good evening to practice some landscape photography, just probably not in Wadsworth. Amen to that. After work today, I'm going to find those foxes that you told me about. I'm going to go photograph the foxes tonight after work. Jim has been shooting a lot of wildlife, some lighthouses, and some cityscapes. So, Jim, is this normally what you shoot? Because I think you normally do sports and stuff too. So you're really getting outside of your comfort zone. What else do we have here? We have Mike joining us from Copley, Ohio. Hopefully you are doing well. And I want to get into today's live stream real quick. Hello, one jumped in. Glenna, hello and welcome. Because we have someone that creates this amazing body of work. And if you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor and go check out his website. And as we're doing our introductions, I'll kind of cue it up so we can look at some of the images. But I'll be honest, I had seen his work, but I had never really tied him to the work. I'd always seen it in, some of the campaign work that he's done or advertisements for different companies in the industry, but I never knew it was really his work. And then backstage a couple minutes ago, we were just kind of talking, and I wish we would hit live then because we started talking about some great topics. So I don't want to go any further. We'll go to my announcements at the end. I want to go ahead and get started with our friend here, Aaron Anderson. How are we doing today, buddy?
I am good, brother. How are you?
I am doing well. So give us a update. So where are you at right now? What are you doing? And kind of what you're up to right now.
Yeah, I'm actually, so we're in Paso Robles, which is just north of San Luis Obispo in California. So a few hours to the north of Los Angeles. And right now we're just traveling as a family, really. I have 3 kiddos, and my wife and we sold our house and we travel around in a 5th-wheel RV now. And it's just been it's been a crazy road because of all the virus stuff going on, but honestly, a really kind of a nice, relaxing trip so far. So that's what we're doing. I'm not really working on anything super crazy at the moment, just kind of taking a breath,
Nice. And that's what we need. And that's what a lot of times as, a business owner and even us like at the store, we want to do these things in our business, but you can't land the plane to redo those things. And now it's like the plane has landed, whether you like it or not, like things are coming to a halt. So it's nice that we can actually refocus our art form and try new things. And also, kind of rebuild some of the business stuff as well, or things that you've been wanting to do. So I've been enjoying that myself as well. And that's really the goal of these, weekly live streams is to pull people out of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that's going on right now and maybe get them to try something new. So tell us, what are you going to talk about today? What are you looking to share?
Today, we wanted to hop on and talk a little bit about what's coming with you guys in the class that we have started to plan. And then, honestly, whatever we need to talk about. If people have questions, kind of try to answer them and be as helpful as we can to people. I'm really a big advocate for taking care of yourself, especially during this time when we're forced to sit. And it's good to get out, but I am not a huge advocate for busy work. So taking a breath and being in a space where you can mentally come out of this in a good place, I think is just as important as creating in this time. So.
Absolutely. And what I want everybody that's on the live stream to do is jump over to his website and take a look at, some of the images that are on there, because I want to talk a little bit about obviously some of the images, but more like how do you even start with this kind of thing. So we're going to be talking, you're going to be a guest at Pixel Photo Fest, one of our educators, with the idea of cinematic portraiture. So let's go ahead and open up with that. What exactly is cinematic portraiture? What does that mean?
So cinematic portraiture, I always kind of like to call it lighting with intention more than anything else. I think what cinematography does in general, when you're watching a movie, you don't tend to think about the lighting, or at least you really shouldn't be thinking about the lighting. So if you think about a lot of the movies that you see and it looks beautiful, the first thing that pops into your mind isn't, oh, this is how they lit that scene. I think a lot of times it even feels a little bit more like a mystery because we're not sure how they lit it because it looks so natural to the environment that they're in. And that's really what cinematic photography for me is it's using the scene that you have and lighting it in a way that we're not like, oh, strip box, soft box, so on and so forth. Because I feel like photography, it kind of gets pigeonholed into that sometimes, where we get lights and we just put them up because it looks cool, but there's not really an intentionality behind the lighting. And that's where I think cinematic photography and photography kind of start to differ a little bit, is you're actually really thinking about what the scene looks like and the mood you're trying to convey when you're lighting a scene.
Absolutely. And I just had to, sorry for the pause there. I just put the link to his website on YouTube as well as Facebook, so you can check out those images. And that's a really good thing. And that's what I was trying to, like, when I look at your images, I'm going to go ahead and bring those back up here. It's not, like you said, I'm not really thinking, like, I'm looking at the lights thinking, like, holy crap, like, this lighting looks amazing. But there's something else about it that I'm brought to these images, like even this one here. So this USA, Team USA, what is that, biathlon? Is that what the...
Yeah, she's actually USA shooting, so she does shotgun.
Okay. So, and I'm looking here and I'm just, this is like, I would think it would be like, could be used for a movie poster. And I feel like there was just enough whip in the hair where it was like freeze framed. But the shot, if we look at the shot, we have clouds, it's well lit, but there's just something about the image that draws me in, and it makes me wonder, like, what is she doing? What is she shooting? It makes me want more. And as I look at your images, that's what a lot of these are. I mean, they make me want to know more, like, what is he working on here? Look how this light is just coming in, and it's truly painting with light, and it's really, really drawing me in. So where do you start with something like this? So does a client come to you and say, hey, I want to photograph our shooting team, and we saw that you take these badass pictures? Like, how, like, take us through that. Like, what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's a lot of practice, and so you really need to get out there and start doing it. And I'm not the first person to say this, but it's like you get hired to do the work that you show. And so I'm a huge advocate for get out there and do the work and do it until it's what you want it to be, and show that work. And then that's the work that you'll get hired to do. And that has been how my career has been built, is through personal projects, then showing those personal projects, and then getting hired to do work that's similar. Now, granted, like, I don't only get hired to do these really awesome things, and we all kind of have these projects that aren't as awesome, but that's what I do on the side. Is even if I get a job, I take that money and I'll put usually thousands of it back towards a personal project after that, to try and keep building my portfolio in the way that I want it to be, in the way that I want it to look like. And that's really how that body of work has been built. And then how I've gotten the clients that I've gotten is by creating work that I want to get hired to do.
So where would you say that you draw your inspiration from?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. Like, I don't have a straight answer for it. I love video. I mean, in general, just watching, especially like sci-fi films that really play with some interesting, trying to think of, like, Oblivion is one that I really like. And sometimes I'll like movies just because they look cool, not necessarily because they're awesome movies.
Right.
The Joker for me, the new one, Joker, that movie kind of changed the way I saw a little bit, and the way that they shot and lit everything was unbelievable. Like, I saw it in the theater and I walked out feeling like a different person.
So let's break that down a little bit more. So when you say that, how you were looking at things, how they portrayed that story, how they lit that story, like, were there certain aspects of it? Because a lot of people have said that exact same thing, between that and then another movie that was similar to that was it like 1912 or 19, whatever that movie was, that was all shot like one. It was like shot in one continuous shot. Like, people see the movies Crazy. And then they, you left change. So what was it about that movie that changed you? Like, was it the colors? Was it the lighting? Was it the storytelling? Like, is there anything that you could pinpoint?
And to that, I would say yes to all of them. I think that it's so important to realize what teamwork it takes to make these pictures, and that you need people with you, and you need people who are really good at what they do. And in video, it's really interesting how everything is sort of separated into jobs and roles. And in photography, those kind of get taken away a little bit. A lot of times you end up doing kind of everything. And I love seeing, for instance, in the Joker, there's some shots where they're pulling back and there's the prop design is incredible. The set design is amazing. The lighting is incredible. The sound design is incredible. The soundtrack that was written by the musician is incredible. And when all of those things come together, it makes this amazing package. But it took tons of people to get it to that place. And that's one of the things I really love, is working with teams and working with groups and collaborating on projects. And I think that that's when you get your best results, is when you're working with other people and using all of your best attributes to create something. So that for me is, I see that and I see the different people's hands and their fingerprints, and that's really, really neat.
Absolutely. And what are some of your, I'm on your website now, what are some of your personal projects? Like, I want to give people an idea of, some of the personal projects that you did that allowed you to work with some of these awesome clients. Do you have any of those on your website?
Yeah, no, a lot of the images on my website are personal projects. And like, if you first pull up, I'm trying to think here. I don't have it in front of me. I don't know if you have it.
Yeah. Should be up on screen. Oh, there. Now it's up on screen. Here we go.
Gotcha. Let's see. So the one at the top right, the astronaut, that's client work. That's for Bosch. The astronaut is actually my son. That was
so cool.
That was a shot that I did. It was kind of a collaboration with Fujifilm, but really just a personal project. The top left is a tattoo artist who's local. That was a personal project. Ginny, the boxer down below, I work with them. She's an Olympic athlete. She's actually like the world champion right now.
Oh, nice.
Then the one down below, the gentleman with the paintings, that was a client. It was an art gallery that was putting together a presentation. The basketball player was Monster Energy. So if you can, it's kind of interesting because the client work sort of like intermingles with my personal work. And that's really what I want. I mean, in the end, it's really fun. And like a lot of stuff you're going through now is personal. Ellen Crum, that was a big project with Ellen Crum, the girl with the dust. That was for like the launch of a product. The gentleman with the beard was a huge collaboration with a homeless shelter. That actually ended up being like a gallery show in a museum, which was really amazing. And it helped raise money for the homeless shelters here. All the cowboy stuff was personal project. It was just something I was really interested in. That was an awesome project. And I think one of the things I really like when you were kind of talking, and I appreciate all the compliments, is that you can't tell what's real sun and what's not. And I really love that. And I think that kind of goes back to that idea of cinematic photography is, for instance, the one with the cowboy and the American flag behind him. That was all strobes, because the place where we wanted to shoot, I thought I was going to get a sunset and it went away before we could get there. And so we ended up just putting up a bunch of lights and creating our own sunset so that we'd have the same feel and can get that vibe. And I think that's what I love about cinematic lighting and photography is you go to a scene and you create it instead of saying, oh man, we're at the mercy of the sun and hopefully the sun does cool stuff. Otherwise we're in big trouble. So.
That's awesome. And we did have a question come up. The question is, do you conceive a personal project based on maybe a client you would specifically want to attract? So like in this case, you had the pictures of the, cowboy. Was it because you wanted to, you said it was because you were interested, but have you ever done it? Maybe you wanted to start working in that niche where you wanted to do more Western wear because you love cowboys, you love the work that you can do with cowboys, the stories that you can tell, or is it all, you have things that you hold near and dear to your heart, and if a client comes, great. If not, that's fine too.
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think about if there's a client that I'm interested in talking to or have been talking to, I might do a test that will draw them in a little bit more. It's like, oh man, maybe you need to see something else from me. And so I'll create something like that and then send it along, which has worked in the past. That's been kind of an interesting way to get clients. But more than that, and I was talking about this the other day with somebody, is I want the overall feel of the body of work to be consistent, so that no matter what the subject becomes, you understand what it's going to look like when you get the final product. And I think when I first started, I felt like I had to shoot these, one thing is like, you have to shoot this. But I think really once you start to build a style in a voice, then you can translate that style and voice into a lot of different things. And so it's been really fun to, for instance, work with a tattoo artist and a cowboy and a shooter or a wrestler or a boxer or whatever, and still be able to tell those stories and have the same kind of feel and voice, but be able to jump from subject to subject in a fluid way.
And what would you say like your style is? I mean, obviously, cinematic portraiture, but like what is your style? Is it dark? Is it wonderment? Like what would you, if you had to put, a title on it, what would you say it would be?
Oh man, I've got dark and dramatic a lot is the words that come up.
But I would almost argue clean too, because like I'm looking at some of these, it's like these are super clean. You know what I mean? Like even the Fuji one that you did here, I think this is a Fuji one with the yeah, so like it's super clean around the edges. Like we definitely know who your subject is. There's no doubt. So I mean, I would also say a little clean. Like it's a very clean. We're drawn into your person, your subject matter, and I mean, it's just like I said, I'm blown away by it because it's just so captivating. Like I feel like I'm there in all these photos.
Yeah, and that's always kind of been a goal of mine, is that I want the images to be able to sit there and you just want to stare at them and find the little details. That's been a drive of mine since the beginning of my career. And so I think that's where lighting really started to tie in, was you can reveal those little secrets, the little snippets, the things that you want people to see, and then hide the things that you don't want people to see. I think is a really interesting, it's fun. I mean, because you get into this space and you almost, if you walk into the space, it looks beautiful, but then when you put your camera up, it's like, it looks okay. So it's up to you to really go in there and try to start lighting in a way that you can see everything. Like I think that scene was, I want to say it was 8 lights total. Wow. And then the other one was more than that. I mean, and again, if you look behind her, it's incredible stuff back there. That was actually this is a huge personal project that I actually did with a director. And it was in an abandoned newspaper factory, which is still like one of my favorite locations we've ever been in. And where she's standing was where the printing press used to be for the newspaper. And so it was completely pitch black in there. It was amazing. And you have to light everything. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to see any of it.
And that's what I'm like looking around. I'm seeing fog over on the right-hand side, coming in. There's this haziness across. Again, like you said, I'm just sitting here and there's little keys, like, leading us. These leading lines are obviously, they're bringing us in. But like I could seriously stare, at this photo forever. So what are some of the elements that, like, what is the secret to that? You know what I mean? Like what is it about the photos that, are allowing us to do that? Like, is it the compositions? Is it the subject matter? Like I'm looking at these and a lot of times, you hear, like, let's say it's in food photography. Oh, you get to work with that chef all the time. So of course your photos are going to be great. Or you have, the prettiest model for portraits. So of course they're going to be great. You have such a mix of people that's not it. So like, what is it when you're designing these photos, when you're, getting these ideas for what they look like? Why is it that we're so captivated?
I think a lot of it has to do with what are you trying to say? A lot when I sit down with these people, and that could be another huge part of it too for me, is these are all usually become personal relationships where I find these athletes or they find me. And especially with the personal projects, one of the kind of quote unquote requirements is that we meet and that I sit down and hear their story and who they are. And I think the ability to interact with another person and say, what's the story we're trying to tell and how do we tell it effectively in a way that showcases you and what we're trying to say? Again, it goes back to that collaboration thing for me, because when you're being able to sit down and communicate with another human being, what you're trying to say. And then all we're really trying to do is use lighting in the best way possible to communicate that story. I think it becomes kind of magical. And being on set with people like this and athletes like this is, I mean, it's an amazing experience in and of itself. And that is how I think of lighting, is like lighting is my tool to tell a story. And so if I come into a space, I want to make sure that the subject is the focus, but that also, if we're telling a story, we can bring all of that to life in a way that complements them, as opposed to, again, I think photographers, sometimes we get sort of locked into this, like, I have a pretty girl, I have a sunset, and I have a light. And it's like, we put them all together and it's super cool. And when you first get started, it does feel super cool because you have this light and you're controlling these things that feel so magical. But I think really kind of tastefully toning them back to a place where, yes, we're revealing things and we're showing things, but we're remembering what we're trying to say and how we're trying to light and what we're trying to do. And that kind of goes into the class a little bit. Is I want to be able to teach people, like, we need to be really careful about what we're trying to say and the intentionality behind it. Sometimes we're doing things just to be cool and look cool, and that's okay too. But a lot of times we need to think through what we're trying to say and then look at the lighting and say, does this complement what I'm trying to say? Is what I'm trying to say that I have a light and there's a sunset, or am I trying to tell a different story about this girl? Like, it's interesting how you could have the same light, the same sunset, and you could tell a story with a person, or you could make it look like a photograph. And that's really the choice that I started to steer away from. Was I don't want it to just look like, oh, dude has lights. I want it to be, man, how is this done? Why was it done? Who is this person? You know, and I think that is what has kind of led my career, so to speak, is that's what I want to say, is I want you to look at the people and look at the locations and look at what we're doing and maybe be intrigued by the story, instead of just, hey, let's break it down in a lighting diagram for the sake of breaking it down in a lighting diagram.
Right. And like with this, so is this like an abandoned,
like, it's an abandoned hotel or what hospital boiler room.
Okay. Yeah. And like, what was, like, let's break this down. Like, what was her story that she wanted to tell?
So it's really cool because she was this fitness model who was really extremely strong, but also did yoga. And when we got into this space, I was like, man, look at the strength and like the character and patina of this boiler. And how do we combine those things of like strength, but also the ability to do yoga and have flexibility? And it was just an interesting mix of things to me, of like this organic pose where she's showing her flexibility and her strength in front of something that's like has all of this strength and these lines. And I was totally stoked about. And it was weird because I was like, man, this is where I want to do the yoga, just because of the lines and because of how she's going to be able to interact with the space and reveal those things that kind of put her in a place where she's the focus. But then there's all this stuff that is like, wow, it embodies strength for her, but also shows her capabilities, which is really what I was going for.
Nice. I love it. So I wanted to go back to that one photo as well of the is it an astronaut you said it was for Roush, right?
Bosch.
Mm-hmm. So take us through that. So did Bosch call you and say, hey, like, we have this astronaut that we want you to do a profile on, or like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so they actually, it was really cool. This is a cool story because the briefing was basically, we want you to do it because we like your style and we wanted something that kind of fits. They were using a lot of he's like an incredible videographer, director, Solomon Lighthelm. They were using a lot of his references for the video because I directed the video for his talking and for the stuff that was going to go in, and they were using all these amazing like Solomon Lighthelm stock footage. And they said, we just want it to match. And they liked the work that they saw from me. And if I do the work that I have on my website, then we're good to go. And that was basically the briefing. And it was like, okay, great. Like,
That was easy.
That's a great conversation. So yeah, I that was one of those things where they contact you and say, hey, we love your stuff. If you do that, then we'll pay you. And you're like, okay, sold. let's do it.
And I think that's a really important lesson too, of only showing the work that you enjoy. The work that you didn't have a picture of a newborn up there, and then someone called you for newborn work. You know what I mean? Like, you had exactly what it is. This is, and you are you alienating a lot of jobs? Yeah, but they're the jobs that you probably don't want to shoot anyway. So by putting all this up there, is that normally how it goes for you, because you're showing this type of work? Is that what the briefings tend to be like? I mean, do you find that more and more?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, yeah, that definitely. And to be honest with you, especially early on in my career, like, I said no. Like, if it was not what I was thinking or what I wanted, like, I would turn it down and just say, like, listen, I don't think this is a good fit for me, and I don't think it's a good fit for my style. And I think, honestly, you don't want to be working with a client where, like, this is all that you're doing all the time. You're like, well, I would really like to do this and create this dramatic scene. And they're like, well, we really wanted, like, this baby to be against a white cotton sheet. And it's like, well, you got the wrong guy, man. Like, let's just call it what it is. So I think that is important to know that, like, I'm not going to be a great fit, and that's okay. And I was on a podcast the other day, and they were asking me about my slogan, visuals for the victorious, and they're like, what was the story about that, like, why? And I was like, honestly, like, we want to work with people who want to win and want to do great things. And if they don't want to do that, and if it's just like mediocre work that we just need to do it to get it done, like, I don't really want to be involved in that.
No.
Excuse me. So it's like one of those things where that was a very intentional move from the beginning. And there's even people who, like, I know and are friends of mine who will ask me to do a job and it's paid. And I'm like, that, dude, it's just not a good fit for me. We're not going to be happy, because I don't want to do that. And honestly, you don't want me to do that, because it's a very different, I produce a certain style of work, and that is important to know that. So. Right.
So what was the story that they were telling with these images? Like, what were they used for? What was the end point for these images?
So it was basically a big landing page for a new product that they had developed with him called SoundSea. And basically it goes up on the International Space Station, and it hears when problems are happening and so it can actually, like, hear when a product is not working correctly, like a machine or a jet or whatever.
Sorry, I was going back to the other one that you have, because you have one of him in, like,
in the cockpit. Yeah,
because that one was pretty amazing. Because I want to pull it. So it goes inside.
Overview? I think it was an overview.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
So it goes into the cockpit and listens for like if something breaks, or like, what is the idea behind it?
So it's not necessarily the cockpit. Like, so it goes up. This one, I think, is going on the International Space Station, and it sits and listens to, like, motor sounds or whatever. And then it'll hear if something sounds wrong, and it'll alert them that something could be breaking, so that it kind of helps to prevent a problem before it happens, is the way I understand it.
And how much of that do you feel like you have to know about, like, for that project, like, that they were doing that? Did you feel like, I noticed, like, he had a headset on in a cockpit? Is that cueing us that it's listening? Like, is it that level of, or is that just his natural place, and because he's an astronaut and you needed a cockpit?
No, yeah, it's second one for sure. I mean, it was a place where we got briefed and kind of went sight unseen to this place, and so we knew what the vibe needed to be and what it needed to look like. But when I showed up, it was like, okay, this is what we have to work with, because it was such a fast turnaround, because they were launching it and they needed somebody right away. And so it was just like, boom, we were briefing, we were shooting, like, we had to brief the day before, and then we went up and shot it. And so I don't usually work like that. Usually I have at least a day to scout or talk to somebody and see where we have locations and that kind of thing. But with this one, we just needed to turn it around. So they sent me treatments showing what the vibe of the video was, and we needed to match that. And then we used what we had to create in that space. And again, that's where cinematic photography comes into play, because you can use the space and dictate all the lighting and say, well, I know I need this, 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 and this, and we'll get this shot in this space. And being able to create inside the space, that's like my favorite thing to do, is say, wow, look at this space, look at this person. Okay, how do we make this look awesome? And that's where I like to veer away from the idea of like, I'm the top right key light guy. I don't have people ask me what like my go-to lighting setup is, and I do not have one, because I don't really want to. Like, I want to walk into a space, and even if it's a studio, say, what are we trying to say? What are we trying to do? And then we'll build the lighting around that.
No, I love it. And actually, that brings up a really good point. We had a question come in. How do you discover places to shoot, or does the client have spots they want to use?
Yes to both. I mean, if I'm doing a personal project, then it's all about discovering spaces to shoot. And what I would say there is, one, be super creative, and two, talk to people that you already know. So when I work with athletes, a lot of times I'll ask them, hey, do you know anyone who has a really cool gym? Or do you know anyone who has a really cool building we could use? Or do you have any friends who own abandoned buildings or warehouses or whatever? And then we start to explore those possibilities. I'm always looking. I've even done stuff where like I'll see an abandoned building for sale, and I'll call the real estate agent and say, hey, either can I pay you to go in there, or is there any way that we could go in and shoot in this location? I have friends who actually do own abandoned buildings, so that's really interesting. And I think you're just kind of always looking. One of Tommy Reynolds, who I do live stuff with sometimes, who's in the UK, he goes on, here's like an insider cheater tip, is he goes on to places that will help you find a location, and he'll take like a picture of the location, and then he'll Google search it, and then find out what the location is, and like call them directly. Because a lot of times, if you know the person or you can get a hold of them directly, you'd be surprised they might just let you do it for free, especially depending on where you are in the world. Like, I know in Colorado, when I'm there, or Colorado Springs, or even I was talking to someone in Pomona, a lot of times they just want someone to use the space for something cool. And if you come in and you're excited and you say, hey, I love your space, it would be super fun to go do a photo shoot there. Would you guys be willing to let us do that? And maybe you have them all sign releases saying if you fall and die, you're not going to sue them. And that's right. Granted, that's no big deal. But that's how we've gotten into a lot of the abandoned buildings that we have, is either I'll just call someone, or I'll call a friend of a friend and say, hey, I'm really looking for like an abandoned warehouse or something, or we need a gym, or we need, whatever. And if it comes down to it, you can pay, but especially in small towns or in places that aren't like LA and New York, you can get into locations for really cheap, because they don't know what to charge you. And it's like, oh, well, right. Like $150. And it's like, yeah, awesome. Sold. Right. Or like some of the stuff we did in the hospital room with Noah for the Fujifilm thing. It was a college, simulation room. And so they had all of the hookups, and they were super nice, and they let us go in there and set up all of our lights. They hooked them up to an IV. They had all the screens and all those different things. And it was really cheap. I can't remember how much it was, but I don't think I spent more than $150 on it total. And they were really happy to have somebody there shooting. And they're like, yeah, please tell people about our location, because this is really fun. And so I think if you're creative and you use the people around you to like advocate for you, because they want to, I mean, people want to help you. You just need to be willing to reach out and ask and say like, hey, do you know anyone? Or even, so you're on Facebook now, Jen, I would say like, if you post to all your friends and say, I need a location, it needs to look like this, and you would be shocked about how many people want to help you find that. Then start rolling with those things like, oh, my friend Joe owns a wood shop. Like, this is a conversation that we actually had to have for a video that I was helping produce and shoot. And it was like, we need a wood shop. Okay. Facebook friends, who knows someone with a wood shop? And then there was like 5 responses like, oh, my friend Tim, my friend Steve, these guys all have wood shops and you should check them out. And then, yeah, we ended up actually shooting in someone's guitar assembly. Like he builds guitars, and it's crazy
So
because
cool.
there's all these people who that know people, but you just don't think of it that way. And that's really how I operate, especially when it comes to athletes, because athletes know some pretty radical people and have access to some pretty cool places because they want to be known as like working with this athlete. It's like, yeah, we work with the gold medal athletes and stuff. So anyways, hopefully that helps, Jen. Yeah.
So let me pull up the Fujifilm just so that way people have an idea of what exactly he was talking about. Because this project had like really two parts. I mean, there was the images like this, but then there was the in the hospital room. So take us through this. Like, what was the story?
Hands. Yeah, so it was told basically. Me and Noah. This like took a really long time to produce. Actually, we were trying to figure out a way to tell his story through images, and do it kind of in 4 to 5 different stories or different pieces. And the initial conversation was just his story, and then we kind of narrowed it down to what are key moments in the journey that you had, and how do we portray those in still images. And this is where we landed. And it kind of, for him, the journey to the Olympics really started in the hospital room when he had his leg amputated. I mean, obviously, before that, he had cancer and then ended up amputating his leg. But he saw the Paralympic snowboarding in the hospital. And so we wanted to start the story there. And then he talked about, so for instance, this shot, we got a lot of coronavirus comments on this shot, but which it was shot way before that. So in good taste. But this shot was really about his community and being uplifted. And it was just an interesting, as we sat down and tried to start coming up with ideas, like, how do we show community? How do you show support? How do you show people surrounding you? And I was like, we're kind of skirting this line of like zombies versus support, but we wanted to really go for it. And I'm stoked on how it came out. It was an incredible amount of work, but
such a powerful image. I mean, especially too, like you said, supporting him and like uplifting and like, I don't know, it's just such a powerful image. And now some of these, so were you out on location? Are these composited? Like, I don't feel like a lot of your work is composited, but I guess that's a question. Like, do you do composites?
Yeah, a lot of my work is composites, but that's awesome that you say that, because I don't want it to feel like a composite. So success.
Because I'm looking at some of the other ones, and I'm like in the warehouse and stuff like that, where I've seen obvious people like have turned the that look or that style, and they are 100% just composited images because they bought the background and popped them in there. Were you shooting on site with these, or was this?
So this one, all the sky and everything is all composited.
Sure.
But it's all on location. And then actually the image of him itself is a composite, because we had 2 images that we liked, but we didn't have a hand. So he had to be put together, and the left side of the photo had to be put together. So yeah, I use compositing. It's very interesting. I came from a background of retouching. And when I first got out, I was retouching full time and at Sugar Digital in San Francisco. And they really kind of taught the ability to create a composite, but really stress this idea of like not making it look like a composite. And so for the most part, I shoot all the frames for my composites. So it's like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it all the way. I don't usually buy stock. Depending on, obviously there are some things where I cannot get them, and so I'll have to buy stock. Like, I think the magazine cover that you posted for the advertisement of this, that was some stock images and then some of our images. But it's an interesting thing with these color powder photos is a lot of times they end up being composites, just because maybe I just suck at it, but I can't do it in one throw. Like the getting all of it in one throw is just so hard to do. And so really you're looking for different pieces that really jive together. So you'll throw multiple times and say, okay, we've got legs, we've got head, we've got background, and then be able to put them all together. And it's a little bit of a dance with those colored powder photos. I mean, that's messy and very interesting to work with.
No, am I correct to assume that he's on a trampoline here?
Yeah, there's a behind the scenes video for you guys if you want to watch it afterwards. Kind of shows where we were, shows the lighting, and then I did a article on f-stoppers that shows all the lighting breakdowns and everything that you need to like see what we were doing and how we were doing it on pretty much every image that we took. And I showed like what modifier, what light, all that jazz. So it's up on f-stoppers still.
And I just put the link to your website, which has the link to Fuji, f-stoppers, and somewhere else. I went ahead and put that up there as well, because I think that's just an amazing project and a story that I think is super important to tell. And the way that you did it was just so on point. That was so cool.
Yeah, it was a crazy project. That one hands image, it was hundreds of layers, and I think it ended up taking me like 36 hours in Photoshop. And then obviously all the studio time too, because we only had like 15 people, like 15 to 20 people. So we had to move them around the scene and shoot plates for every section. And then I had to actually, what ended up happening was I ended up having to take out the hands one by one and then move them. And because we only had 20 people, it was like, I got to take your wedding ring off in that one and your tattoos off in that one and then this one. And so that it didn't look like it was all the same hands over and over again. So it was just like a really interesting, it was what I was trying to avoid. But when we got there, I was like, oh man, this is what we're working with. We're going to do it. So I'm stoked on the way it came out, but man, I don't want to work on hands for a little while after that one. That's for sure.
So do you ever find like you're going in, they tell you the story and you just hit like a creative wall? Like what do you do to overcome that? Like, do you ever have somebody telling you their story and you're just like, what the hell did I get myself into?
Yeah, for sure. There's been a few times. The shooter actually was one of them where I was really kind of like struggling with how we were going to get there. I think because shooting photography has such like people probably haven't even seen it, but it has a very distinct, like, it's not good usually. So it's kind of a hard thing when you got this person with a gun and it's like, how do we make this cool? And yeah, it definitely takes, for me, it then just takes time and research. And I'll start going into the places where I find inspiration, whether it be like I'm looking at Vogue magazine or I'm watching a movie. And there are certain times where like you can ask my wife, I'll be like, dude, I'm struggling. I need to watch Mad Max, or I need to watch Joker, or I need to go to the library and look at Vogue, or, whatever. And I find a lot of inspiration from Vogue. Some of the photographers in there are by far my favorite, and they just have such cool concepts, because I feel like fashion photography gets to break away a little bit more. So yeah, for sure. I think we all hit those ruts where it's like, oh crap, I don't know what we're going to do to make this cool. And I mean, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. There's amazing photographers and videographers and cinematographers out there, and you can go. And then I think what's really fun is to like take that, maybe it's really cinematic, it's this really interesting shot, and then to go and do it for a shooter instead of whatever it was before. And I love that kind of stuff where maybe it hits their story a little bit more and not just shooting. And yeah, so I guess that's my thought there.
I love it. So where can people, we have about 15 minutes. I want to open it up for questions that we have for Aaron before we let him go. You're about what, 3 hours different? So this is still a little early for you.
Oh yeah. All the kiddos. I was just like trying to get kids out of bed and stuff before we hopped on. Like, okay, everybody go outside.
Clear the room. And you're traveling around with the kiddos, right? And we were talking a little bit before the show that, you finally get that break a little bit and you're getting to kind of restart the family time. And that's awesome that you get to do that. And I wanted to also point out his Instagram account, because he has so much inspirational content on there as well. So if you head over to Aaron Anderson visuals, you'll see where, just like the palettes, like the colors, I mean, there's just so much harmony in these images and they work together so well. And, a lot of photographers like this, for example, would look at this window and be like, oh, I can't shoot that because I would, he'll be dark. And you're like, nope, we're doing it. I like the shape. I like everything about it. Like, let's make it happen. So tons of inspiration, nonstop inspiration on his Instagram page. And I absolutely love all the work that you share. It's super inspirational. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, much appreciated. And Instagram is a little more up to date. And you'll see, like, I'm taking a bit of a sabbatical. Usually I try to post pretty frequently, but right now with everything going on, it's just been a nice time to not worry about it, because social media is just, it's kind of a drag sometimes.
I know.
But yeah, there'll be stuff. I'm working on some different ideas and some things. We're heading back to Colorado here soon, and we should have more work flowing soon. But right now we're just kind of taking a breath, which has been really needed. So
heck yeah. Very cool. So as questions come in, I have a couple announcements that I wanted to share with you now. Obviously, guys, I talk about it on every live stream, but we jump to our questions. But Pixel Photo Fest is August 14th through 16th, and as of right now, everything is full steam ahead. So as that changes, I will let you guys know. But he is going to be one of our awesome presenters, and it's hands-on. We're putting together a pretty cool thing. We've brainstormed a few ideas on how to, kind of put him in his element. Like, I want him to be comfortable. I don't want him to say, if he doesn't want to work with models, then why are we, why do we have models coming? I want to find something that he is, that he can add to his project. So we've been talking about, having a KISS tribute band was one of the ideas. Athlete, we have all these ideas that we actually probably should circle back around to. But we are going to create some amazing images at PhotoFest. So I urge you, if you haven't already, use the code. It's $100 off. So that saves you. That's half off. So for $99, you get 3 days of hands-on instruction where you can learn from some of the best. You saw the images. I mean, he obviously knows what he's doing, and he's here to, learn, to teach, to create some awesome work at Pixel Photo Fest. So make sure you join us for that. Another thing, we have our weekly photo contest. This week's theme is landscape. All you have to do is post it on either Facebook or Instagram with hashtag the Pixel Connection and hashtag landscape, and you will be able to enter for a chance to win $50. Easy way to win $50. Also, I wanted to remind you that Tether tools. Remember, Aaron talked about, or actually we were talking beforehand with the hands picture, shooting tethered. And, I'm assuming that you use Tether tools stuff, the high vis and all that.
I don't.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe not. So, but he does shoot tethered. So if you are looking for tether tools or tether cables, they have an awesome wireless tethering system that we talked about yesterday. They are doing their 10% off until the end of the month. So if you need absolutely anything to shoot tethered, please let us know. I also want to let you know that we're working with Sigma to raise money for local food banks. So 5% of your lens purchase will go directly to our local food banks. And then finally, we do have one-on-one classes. So if you do need help with a certain aspect, or you want to get started with your camera, whatever that might be, please let us know, and we'll be more than happy to help. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up some of these questions. When you accept a project, do you set a timeline you work with, or clear all day just for that particular shoot?
I mean, we pretty much always have timelines, but it usually takes a day. I am known for being extremely planned. So I actually not only have a timeline, but I will set specific times on the shoots itself. So if I'm doing 4 different looks, I'm going to send out a call sheet that shows we do hair and makeup, shoot 1, hair and makeup, set 2, so on and so forth. So I'm a huge planner, and I think people appreciate that, especially the people that you're working with. They don't want to come in and be like, oh, how long am I going to be here? And I don't know, and we're going to end or whatever. So I will show how much time we need for hair and makeup. And I usually coordinate with the hair and makeup people. Like, how long do you think you need for this look? This is the look we're going for. And then I'll build that in, and then I'll use that time for setup time or whatever and testing. And then that way, when they come in, it's all cameras firing and we're ready to rock and roll, and it feels professional, because it should. Anytime I do work, I want it to feel like we're on a professional set. That's really important to me. And so that's part of that, is making sure that those timelines are set up, and then respecting people's time. If I tell them they're going to be done at 6, that's when they're done. And in the client world, that's very important too, especially if you're working with higher end people. I mean, I've had some clients where they're celebrity clients and they have 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. And you don't get more time than that. And if you take more time than that, you don't ever get to work with them again. So it's really important to set those things and stay to it.
Absolutely. I love it. And a question that another one that we had came in. It looks like you use gels quite a bit with some of your shots. What is your thought process on using gels? Create the overall mood, or just to highlight a particular area in the shot?
Yes, totally. Gels. I love gels. Yes, you picked it up. I love gels. I think it's amazing. There's a couple of reasons why. Coming from a post-production perspective, there are some retouchers who say never use gels and do it in post. And I actually really disagree with that. After having done both, and done where I put gels in post, quote unquote, and then where I use gels in the field, one, it requires you to be a little bit more precise and thoughtful when you're using a gel, because it's really hard to undo. You can kind of shift the colors, but you can't really undo it very well. And two, it doesn't look the same to me when you do it in post-production. So I like to have it in the lights when I'm actually shooting. And then in regards to overall mood or highlighting a point, yes, on both accounts for sure. If we're doing sunsets, then I'm going to use orange. If I feel like the light needs to feel more daylight balanced, then we're going to use a little bit of blue. Or we're thinking through, where's the light coming from? What's the point of the light? And that affects the overall mood. But then if I have a light in the room that's super tungsten, but it's blue hour, then we're going to be switching those things around. Or if there's a neon sign that requires pink or whatever it is. So you really, when I look at a scene, I see if that light would be a different color, then we need to make sure we take care of that. And if it's sunset, quote unquote, then we need to have a CTO or whatever it is. So it's really, I like to use color to say something. Sometimes it's just cool. Don't get me wrong, Jim. I love colors, but there's a lot of times when I'm thinking to myself, if it was actually sunset, it would be this color, and this light in the room would be more green. And so we'll swap those things around. So it's going to be those little touches that are awesome, but then the overall, I still use gels for the mood as well.
Excellent. And how much do you balance like the use of practical lighting versus the gel, or I'm sorry, your created lighting? Like, do you try to use practical lights when they're there, or do you try to control them in your own way?
Like available light, you mean?
Yeah. So like if there is a lamp in the corner, are you going to put your own light in there with your own color temperature just because that's the mood that you want? Are you going to try to shift the scene to be, part of that? Like, how would you approach that?
Yeah, so for the most part, if I'm going to use the available lighting, basically and this is where the cinematic photography thing comes in, but also kind of what I want to talk about during our classes, we need it to feel like it's just amped up a little bit from where it would be so that we can see, but you're not thinking, oh my gosh, there's a ton of lights in this room that shouldn't be there. But it's like, oh man, I can't believe. And this is what this to me is like the gold, is when you look at a scene and there's this little desk lamp and you're just like, man, I wish I could make pictures like that with that one little desk lamp. And it's, you're not even thinking like, oh, there's a lot of lights in that room. And if you look at behind the scenes of video productions, especially, and you just see, you're like, oh my gosh, you're looking at these two dudes sitting at a table, and you just think, man, I wish I had locations where the lighting from the chandeliers was this perfect. Like, it's just so cool that those chandeliers put out that kind of light. And that's not at all what they're doing.
There's like 17 lights.
And the lengths they go to get these things. I mean, with these huge scrims and tens of thousands of not hundreds of thousands of dollars of lights, just so you don't think about them,
right,
is incredible. And I love trying to translate that into photography. I am no like J.J. Abrams or whatever, but I think that the idea is there, and that's what kind of gets me going, where I'm like, man, this scene is just so gorgeous. And a lot of times when you get these people who are so good at dialing in this ambient mixture where you really think it's lit with a desk lamp, but it is gorgeous, it's confusing and amazing at the same time.
Absolutely. So that is all the questions that we have. I wanted to remind everybody kind of what is going on the rest of the week. So thank you again, Aaron, for joining us today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we have the Friday Focus, which is all about the industry news, trends, tutorials, all that fun stuff. It's basically like a weekly news show that has nothing to do with, think of it like the weekly good news show, where we just talk about what we love, photography and video. On Monday, Bobby Lane's going to be on. She's going to be talking about Hollywood portraiture. And Tuesday, Isaac Coffey's going to be on. He's going to be talking about social media. Wednesday, we're going to learn a little bit more about the L mount with Panasonic and Sigma. Thursday, we're going to learn about Tamron. So our friend Bob Sims is going to be back from Tamron, and then again, wrap it out next week with the Friday Focus. If you guys need absolutely anything from us, we are here at the store. The plan is to open on Tuesday. So we will be open to customers. We are urging people to take advantage of curbside pickup and shipping options, a ton of free shipping online. But we will be opening up. So if you do want to try something or need something, we're just going to be limiting it to the amount of people in the store. We're going to be doubling down on sanitation and keeping everything clean. We have awesome custom face masks that have our logo on it. So we are ready to rock and roll. So hope to see you guys. Hope to see your smiling faces. And one more time, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And thanks for the inspiration.
Absolutely. Anytime. And if you guys have more questions you didn't get to and you're on Instagram, just shoot me a message. I do my best to respond in a day or two. And yeah, always happy. Jim, you're most welcome. Facebook user, you are also welcome.
The Facebook user, you are very welcome.
Very welcome, Facebook. That feels like Tron, doesn't it? Tron, that's a great movie. User.
Excellent. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Yep. See you guys.
Cheers.